This is the Bat Flip Podcast. Now here's your host, Damien, David, and Matt. Welcome in, everyone, to another episode of the Bat Flip Podcast. Damien, David, and Matt here with you today. We're going to be looking at the final 2025 MLB postseason bracket. We had the final week of the season wrap up yesterday. We have who's in, who's out. We have our wild card matchups that start tomorrow, Tuesday, September 30th, as we are recording this. So we're going to go over each of those four series, give you our predictions for each series, and then hopefully we'll all get them right, and then we'll come back for division series predictions hopefully later on in the week, but we'll get back to you on that. But before we get to all that, Matt, you're looking fantastic today, let me tell you.
Yeah, my whole computer situation has not improved this week. I've had a lot of busy stuff going on, so I haven't really gotten a chance to. It's something I'll probably have to fix myself. And so I'm currently at my parents' house, who live a few miles from where I live, and borrowing one of their laptops because I didn't want to use my work computer for the podcast. So here we are. But everything's been good other than that this week, and watched a lot of good baseball. Man, that Friday night baseball this week was fantastic. So many good games Friday night. I really enjoyed that. And then over the weekend, it was a lot of fun seeing the playoff races. We've actually had some exciting playoff races this year. That hadn't been the case as much the last couple of years, but it was really fun this year. And looking forward to the playoffs this week. It's that time finally. So David, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I have the smallest of rants to toss our way tonight. First thing was Clemson can't lose the bye week, so we're good on that front. Second is that I had a really good time watching that NASCAR race on Sunday, and I'm a little perturbed with the team owner of a driver wrecking the driver into the wall to win a race, only to lose the race coming off the final corner. I think that's a boneheaded move. I don't like that. I think if the worst case, you should either win it or have that guy win it. But silliness, I think. But I think there's a lot of stuff trending in the right direction on the NASCAR department, and I'm excited about that. This isn't the podcast for that, but I'm still gonna throw my 2 cents in there on how I'm doing, because I'm doing pretty good. There's rumors, there's talks of a full season point system coming back, and there was a good race on Sunday, so I'm pleased with the NASCAR front. So that's how I'm doing this week. Damien, how are you?
I'm doing good. I am realizing a mistake that I made in pre-show, so I'm trying to fix that real quick, but we are all good there. This weekend was absolutely fantastic in most parts. Friday night, I didn't get to watch a lot of the Friday night games because I was at a wedding. So shout out to Kevin and Trace on your fantastic wedding from Friday. You've heard me talk about Kevin before. He's my fantasy football friend that makes all of the food that is way too much, and I eat every single year way too much and get into food comas. They had a fantastic wedding on Friday, so I told him, he watches every week, I told him I'd shout him out. So Kevin, shout out to you. And then Saturday was it was a good day of college football until the LSU game started. Then it was a bad day of college football until the Oregon game started, and then it was a good day of college football again. Brian Kelly finds a way to lose these games all the time, so not particularly shocked there. But Oregon going into the whiteout was really fun. It was a very stressful game. I watched it with our friend Adam, and he can attest that I was on the edge of my seat for every play of that game, basically. So it was a lot of fun. But then we turned our attention to the playoff races and seeing what was going to happen, because we had the tie, and then we had the tie in the NL wildcard race there. Then the Reds took it back, and then the Mets were facing the Marlins, who threw Sandy, Yuri, and Edward Cabrera against them. And then you had the Reds playing the Brewers, who they threw Freddie Peralta, but then, man, it was just a wild, wild weekend overall. So I'm excited. We'll talk about one of my teams having to be in the playoff series, obviously, here too. I'm not particularly excited about who they have to face, but we'll get into that here in a little bit. But let's start with looking at the overall postseason bracket, and we'll kind of start with the races that we were talking about leading up to this. So obviously we spent a lot of time on the AL Central and who was going to win that between the Tigers and the Guardians. The Guardians ended up having that series against the Tigers. They ended up taking the division back. I think the Tigers took it back on over the weekend at one point, and then the Guardians ended up pulling it off and getting that division to then face the Tigers in the wild card series anyways. Funny how that ends up working. So that was a big race for us. And then the other big one was the National League side, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Let's start with the American League side. And let's start with the Guardians and Tigers, and then we'll jump down to the other series here in a minute. But David, what do you think about the Tigers and Guardians series?
Yeah, I mean, this is the matchup that was, it was like last weekend, I think they played. And Cleveland, I think, took 2 out of 3, took the division, kind of control of the division over. That's all they need to do again this time. And they're going to play in Cleveland, which I think is exactly the scenario that we just had, and Detroit lost the series. So as we sit here, I think, Cleveland's in the driver's seat right now. They've got the momentum of a team that's, worked their way back to playoff contention from, what was it, like 14 games back. And then the Tigers have limped into the playoffs. It feels like kind of a storybook expectation where you see, the team with the momentum and the team without momentum. You're kind of like your typical understanding of the way the series goes. Like, it should be Cleveland in 2. Make sure we're the Guardian or of the Tigers, and the Guardians move on. That's what you would expect, right? That's what I would expect. We know baseball's way weirder than that.
Yeah.
And like, in as much as I think that the Tigers are kind of on the back foot in this series, throwing Tariq Skubal will solve a lot of problems in game 1. And if they can just pull that one out, like, if they only have to win one of the next 2, they should have, they should have a chance, right? Like, this Tigers team has been so good. This series is probably the least interesting of the 4 wild card series, just because we've already seen this matchup played out in the last week, and the Guardians won it and took over the division. But I think that if the Tigers could catch fire in this series specifically, they could really be the team, like, be a force and be the team that we thought they might be going forward. It's going to be tough, though. I'm a little undecided, but overall, I mean, maybe I'm a little underwhelmed by the fact that this is kind of the matchup here.
Yeah. I mean, it's fair to say that for sure. Absolutely that. Because, I mean, 3 of the 4 matchups that we're going to, or not 3 of the 4, sorry. Both AL side matchups there are series that we have seen in division this year, right? So you kind of look at that side and you're like, well, we have a history of like, well, Cleveland won 8 of the 13 games this year against the Tigers. So you kind of expect that to be the thing, right? And then you look at the other side on the Red Sox Yankees, which we'll talk about here in a minute. They have won, what was it?
Red Sox have 9
and 4 against them this year. So it's like you kind of expect it that way. But then we get to postseason baseball and it's like, expect the unexpected, right? We just never know with postseason baseball. Last year, I don't think anyone picked the Tigers to beat the Astros in the postseason. And yet they went in there with pitching madness, not having anything else behind Tariq Skubal, and still found a way to win, right? I think you feel a little bit better about their rotation this year because you do have a guy who had good playoff performances last year in Jack Flaherty for the Dodgers. He was hit and miss, but he did have some good performances. The bullpen's still a question, but you just never know what to actually expect in postseason baseball against division opponents, let alone. So, Matt, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think the thing with this series is that Detroit's got an advantage with this being a 3-game series because in game 1 they get to throw Tariq Skubal.
Yep.
And Tariq Skubal, if you win game 1 in these 3-game series, you have a huge advantage because the other team, the pressure all shifts to the other team. They have to scramble their pitching on day 2. Their pitching gets worn out for the 3rd game if they make it. It becomes way more difficult, and obviously you get 2 shots to close it out. So I feel like with Tariq Skubal going in game 1, that's a big deal. But the one thing with Cleveland is that the other big part of these is bullpens.
Yep.
And Cleveland's got a better bullpen than Detroit. And
Absolutely.
just down the stretch of the season, there was a lot of games that Detroit led late and they blew it. So, Cleveland's a lot deeper there. And I think the key for Detroit is going to be if Tarek Skubal can go deep in game one. Like if he can really go deep, and then Detroit can use their better relievers in game two and win it in two. Because I think if this game goes to 3, Cleveland's depth is really going to pay off here. But it's going to be very interesting. I don't really believe in either one of these offenses. I think Jose Ramirez is the best player in this series, and that could be a difference. I think he'll do well. He's been in the postseason so many times. When you talk about Cleveland, the Cleveland Guardians being a team that, over the last 10 years, they've been there a lot. And the Tigers last year made it, but they haven't been there all that many times. This is also a rematch of the series last year in the ALDS, which is a really good series. So, I guess if we're making picks now, I think I might lean Detroit just because of Tarek Skubal, but this is a toss-up to me. I think both of these teams it's going to be a fun series to watch.
So you're saying Detroit in 2 or 3?
I would say you know what? I'm going to say Detroit in 2 because I think if they win game 1, I think they can take game 2. And there's also the kind of the final thought on this is there's something to be said for that pressure really ratcheted up on Detroit late in the season when Cleveland started to catch them. And I think they kind of cracked under that pressure a little bit. But sometimes when you do that and you sneak in with that last spot, you just kind of feel like you're playing with house money at that point a little bit, and kind of takes the pressure off. The expectation's not really high for the Tigers right now, so that could kind of play a factor here as well.
David,
yeah, I think I'm gonna stick with my initial thought on this, which is we just seen this series, so I'm just gonna stick that. I think Cleveland gets it done for the reasons I think Matt kind of said, right? The thing about Cleveland is that this run has been built on starting pitching, and Detroit does not have a big time second and third starter. I think Casey Mize is okay. Jack Flaherty is okay. Both of those guys could shove on a given night, but the way that Tanner Bybee and presuming that we have the lineup here, it's Williams, Bybee, and Ciccone is going to be the 3, and then you'll have Logan Allen, presumably for relief. But I think Tanner Bybee and Slade Ciccone have been insanely good over the last month or so. Those guys are pitching lights out right now. I don't feel like Detroit's guys have been pitching lights out. And then like Matt said, I trust the Detroit bullpen, and I tend to lean pitching for these types of matchups. I'm going to stick Cleveland in 3. I think they do lose the Skubal game, but Cleveland's lineup is just so infuriatingly consistent that they will scrounge out runs against Skubal and have a chance, which is what happened last week. So I just think Cleveland's going to keep doing what they've been doing. They've kind of got the formula to beat Detroit. I think they'll keep that going, and that'll kind of wrap this series up. I'll go 3. I think they get 1. Detroit does, but it's going to ultimately be a disappointing season for the team that was the best team in baseball at halfway.
Yeah, so I'm trying to look and see. So Flaherty pitched in that series, Mize pitched in that series, and Skubal. So it's kind of how you expect it to go. Gavin Williams went 5 shutout there with 9 Ks as well. It is worth noting that it is very small sample size, but Gavin Williams last year in the playoffs got lit up against this Tigers team, I believe. In 2 1/3 inning, he had an 11 ERA. So it's not great, but again, he's going against Skubal. He's pitched a lot better this year. I'm so torn on which way to go here. I see both arguments. I think Detroit has more offensive firepower right now overall. Like Cleveland is like, okay, Quan and it's Jose Ramirez, and then I don't trust a lot of the other people to get it done. Big playoff guy for them last year, David Fry as well, not there due to getting hit with a 99-mile-an-hour Tarek Skubal fastball to the face. We always have people step up, but I think I'm going to go Detroit, and I think I'm going to say that they're going to get it done in 2. I'm kind of in line with Matt there. I think it's just more of a, if they get game 1, then they're just going to try to end it so that they can save the other guys for the end of it, for the division series against the Mariners, knowing they're going to need it. So it's going to be close, but I think they're going to pull it off in 2. So, actually, before we jump to the other, before we jump to the other AL side, let's jump to the Cubs and Padres. Let's bounce that way. Then we'll stick in the NL. We'll come back for the Yankees, Red Sox, because I think that's the most interesting actual matchup of them all. So let's go to the Cubs Padres. Obviously, this season series is tied 3-3. The 3 games in Wrigley were won by the Cubs 2-1 over the Padres there. Pitching matchups. This is where the big key comes in because Cade Horton just went on the IL with a fractured rib. He will not be available until Game 5 of the division series at the earliest. And we were having this conversation over the week before we knew Cade Horton was out of like, well, who's going to throw Game 2?
Yeah.
Well, now it's like, what are we doing in total? It sounds like it's going to be Matt Boyd versus Nick Pivetta in Game 1. Then you have Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish lines up for Game 2 and 3 for the Padres. David, you'll be able to know more about the Cubs pitching plans in Game 2 and 3, but I'm assuming it's some version of Imanaga, Rhea, or Talon.
Yeah, I think what's going to happen is they're going to put an opener for Shota in Game 2. This is what I think is going to happen. Now, I think that's disgusting behavior and should not be lauded by any means, as the starting pitcher should start the game and then continue to pitch in the game. But that's probably what they're going to do since there's no legislation about it, and it's a smart move to get a righty in there against Tatis and Machado so that Imanaga can go face like Cronenworth and some of those Sheets and some of those guys in the second inning. But I think that's the move. And then you'll have, Imanaga work through the lineup twice and then go to probably Mike Soroka or something like that after the fact. Game 3 is they don't know yet. They haven't announced it. I think it should be Colin Ray. Jameson Taillon would be the other option. Very much, break glass if needed type of scenario. I'd probably have both of those guys in the bullpen for games 1 and 2. Don't worry. Don't fret about using either one of them. You also have Javier Assad as a potential starting option. Ultimately, I think the Cubs could probably get this done in 2. They need that offense to show up that was there this weekend is the big, I think, turning point, right? Because I've been looking at this series, obviously, because it's been locked in for a few days now that this was going to be the series, and it wasn't until Saturday that the Cubs did finally lock up a home field advantage over the Padres in this one. But you look at the lineups, and it feels a lot like the Yankees versus the Dodgers in the World Series last year when we were talking about it. I want to reiterate a lot of those points. The Cubs lineup is a lot deeper than the Padres lineup is right now, especially because Ramon Laureano is out. If Laureano was in, this might be a different story because he crushed left-handed pitching so well, and the Cubs are going to have the 2 left-handed starters. But the best, if the Cubs can avoid damage from Machado and Tatis, I just feel like they're set up really well to have success in this series. The lineup finally started clicking this last week. Seiya Suzuki won MLB Player of the Week. Started hitting home runs. PCA got to 30-30. Bush had a monster weekend. If those guys are clicking and hitting, it's going to be real tough to beat the Cubs. And we talk about the pitching a lot. The Cubs bullpen has been really, really solid. I think Craig Counsell's done amazing work piecing together this bullpen. Drew Pomeranz has been amazing. Brad Keller has been amazing. Both of those guys are going to be deployed, in this series pretty well. In as much as the Cubs didn't go get Mason Miller at the deadline like the Padres, I think the Padres definitely have the bullpen advantage. Cubs bullpen's still good. It's not like the Tigers and the Guardians where we talk about the Tigers bullpen is like Kyle Finnegan and Will Vest, and that's it. The Cubs have 5 guys who can get outs. So, I think the Cubs are probably down in the starting rotation battle. They're probably a little bit down in the bullpen battle, but I think the gap in the offense is just so significant. Plus, they're playing at home. I like the Cubs in this one. I'll say 2. I think they sweep them.
Okay. It's going to be a very interesting series to me. I think it's the thing that could be a wild card here, no pun intended, with this being a wild card series, is Michael King. Last year in the playoffs, Michael King was ridiculous, and it sounds like he's going to be used as a long man out of the bullpen, potentially, as it looks like it's going to be Nick Pivetta, Dylan Cease, and Yu Darvish, as you mentioned, which is kind of funny. Dylan Cease and Yu Darvish pitching in this series.
Yeah.
The Cubs traded both of those guys, but it's going to be interesting. Another thing that's kind of to note here, the Padres have a lot of guys with a lot of postseason pedigree in their lineup. You got Fernando Tatis Jr., you got Manny Machado, Xander Bogaerts, Cronenworth. Like you've got, obviously you've got Jackson Merrill has been there before. You just got a lot of guys, and then those pitchers. You look at Dylan Cease. I believe this might be his first year there, or maybe last year. But you got Michael King, who's performed well in the playoffs, and Yu Darvish, who at times performed well in the playoffs. So that's going to be kind of interesting to watch out for. The Cubs have, with Kyle Tucker, who I assume he's been back, right?
Yeah, he's back.
Yeah, okay, that's what I thought.
Played this weekend.
Kyle Tucker and Dansby Swanson. That's really a lot of your postseason pedigree you got with the Cubs. So that part of it's kind of interesting to me. Being at Wrigley is important, I think, for the Cubs. I feel like I might trust the Padres pitching a little bit more at this stage.
Definitely.
I think the offenses are kind of a wash. I mean, especially down the stretch. I know that the Cubs had a pretty good weekend and everything, but like some of those guys who were really killing it for the Cubs, like PCA, just kind of cooled off down the stretch a little bit. So they're young. It'll be interesting to see how they react to October baseball. But, I think I might go Padres in 3. But I think this is another one that's really a toss-up.
Yeah. There's the age-old thing that good pitching beats good hitting, right? And when you look at it, if you're saying in totality, I think I trust the Padres pitching more than I trust the Cubs pitching, right? Overall, I mean, you're saying Pivetta, who's had an insane year. Like, I would have never thought Pivetta would have the level of year he's having here. Then even for all of Dylan Cease's struggles, like all it takes is one thing for Dylan Cease to turn it on and be Dylan Cease we know, right? Yu Darvish, he has looked great recently. They still do have Michael King if anything gets wacky there with those. And then that bullpen is so deep with so much firepower that you almost feel like if the starting rotation only goes 4 innings, they're still going to be fine, right? I know they lost Jason Adam, but being able to run out the other guys there, it's just very, very hard to compete against that. That being said, I do think the offensive advantage is with the Cubs due to the fact that they are throwing 2 left-handed pitchers, sorry. The Padres are going to start 4 to 5 left-handed hitters every game, basically. And Tatis this year has been under league average or below league average against left-handed pitching this year. 97 WRC plus. His OPS is like under 700 against them. If you are throwing 2 left-handers in Boyd and Imanaga for most of the game against those guys, you basically are at the point where you say, just don't let Manny and don't let Xander beat you, right? And even then, if like, don't let Manny beat you, if like Bogaerts ends up beating you, then like, okay, yeah, right? So be it. Yep. Like, so be it. And I do think the Cubs offense is really good, especially now that Kyle Tucker's back. Michael Busch has been pretty good. They're not having to face lefties, right? So you're going to get PCA, you're going to get Tucker, you're going to get Busch, you're going to get those guys against their strong side of the hitting matchup there. I even think Happ is better against righties, I believe.
Yeah, slightly. This year I think he was even, but usually he's better against lefties or against righties.
That's interesting.
Yeah, we got breaking news.
That. Yeah, breaking news as we're talking right now. Bruce Bochy will not return as the Texas Rangers manager.
Wow.
Watch for him to go to San Francisco.
Yeah, I was about to say San Francisco, Tom.
But I do think I lean the Padres just because in the end, I do think that good pitching beats good hitting. And I trust their starting staff to get more outs than the Cubs at the moment. If you had Cade Horton, this would have been a very, very tough decision, I think, because Cade going game 1, then you have all the plans for game 2 and 3 to try and pitching madness like AJ Hinch said last year. You could have done that. I don't think you're in the spot to do pitching madness now with not having that guaranteed guy get you a game. So I think I'm going to go San Diego. I'm going to go San Diego in 3. I do not think this is a sweep. I think that this is going to be a really close back and forth series with the pitching to the offensive power of each side. It's going to be very, very interesting. But I do think San Diego in the end just has a little bit more depth pitching-wise to pull it off. So now let's turn to Los Angeles versus the Reds. And we can actually talk for a minute about the Reds getting the final playoff spot, since we really kind of didn't do that earlier. Matt, go ahead with your Mets rant real quick.
Lol, Matt.
Yeah. Basically.
No, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and gloat because my team is not in it either. But I think they should say the Braves are going to Cancun right now. As Charles Barkley would say, I think they need to send the Mets to Galveston, because that was, I mean, that season for them, I'm telling you, I've never seen a collapse like they had since sometime in the middle of June. They had the 5th worst record in baseball. They were on a 96 loss pace after having the best record in baseball in the middle of June. And it's just remarkable. And kind of the crazy thing about this collapse is we've seen collapses in the past. We saw the Mets do it in 2007 maybe, where they had like a 10-game lead. We've seen another one this year with the Tigers blowing a 15-game lead. And, although they still made the playoffs, but the Mets here, like, it's not like some team got super hot and caught them. Like, they just fell back to the Reds. The Reds played like 500 ball over the stretch. The Mets were one of the worst teams in baseball, and that's how they blew the lead. Not because the Reds just got super hot. Like, even in the Guardians-Tigers scenario, the Guardians won like 10 games in a row at one point, and they've been scorching hot this month. So it's just been kind of crazy. And we've talked a little bit about the Mets as they were collapsing, but the weekend was just a perfect microcosm of their season. They couldn't. Their starting pitching couldn't hold up. The pressure got on their offense, and they couldn't scratch across the runs to come back in those games. So it's kind of the way it's been all year for them. The bullpen was better this week, but bullpen's been a problem most of the second half. Their trade deadline was bad. I mean, there's a lot of issues there, and I'm interested to see what kind of overreactions they might have and what kind of proper reactions they might have to this season, because that they're going to be changing some things up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, when your owner immediately comes out and says, "I'm sorry to the fans for this," like Steve Cohen tweeting that immediately today was just like the most hilarious thing ever.
Yeah.
But it also means like they're going to try and do something this offseason. Obviously, they did the big Juan Soto deal last year. It's not saying they didn't do anything. They spent a lot of money, but you have some very glaring holes this year that you're going to have to make up with the Mets, especially with a guy like Diaz being a free agent. You're losing Helsley, who you traded for. You're
Pete
starting
Alonso.
pitching. Yeah, Pete Alonso already said he's opting out, right?
Yep.
Don't expect him to come back again. Like,
I doubt it. Yeah.
There's a lot of turnover that I think are going to happen with the Mets this year. If anyone has the pocketbooks for it, it's going to be Steve Cohen too. So that's going to be something to watch for sure. But David, real quick.
My thought was, back when Juan Soto signed, right, the first thing I said was the Mets cannot be finished here. And we looked back on that offseason, and it's, they sent Clay Holmes and they did a couple of extra things, but really they brought in the 2024 NLCS Mets and Juan Soto and Clay Holmes. They brought that team to this season, tried to make it better at the deadline, got a hit, missed a hit in the bullpen. That it's kind of, 50-50. That's about right. And they went for Cedric Mullins and ended up DFAing him, I think. Like, they didn't fix any of the problems. They tried to kind of throw some darts at the wall.
Still there. He should have been DFA'd.
He was still there?
But
yeah, he was really, really bad. So they went 1 for 3 in their trade deadline additions. The thing we said last year when the Mets made the Juan Soto move was you have to supplement him with help, especially in the pitching side. And they did not do that. And we've harped on it all year. We've made a lot of points about it. I won't go too long about it, but like it's so funny to see this kind of come complete and finish this collapse that we kind of, I would say, we foresaw literally as soon as they signed Juan Soto. because we said if they don't do anything, this team is not that much better than it was last year, and last year it overperformed. So, it felt like they took an 85 win team last year and got to the NLDS, and then they didn't get any better, but they added Juan Soto and hoped that it would just magically make it another 90 plus win team, and it was not. So that's all I got. It's a shame, but hey, congrats to the Reds, man. They made it in, and you've seen weirder stuff, right? And the Reds making a run.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the series now with the Reds and Dodgers, because the LA won the season series 5-1 here. It obviously will be in Los Angeles. The pitching matchups, I think this is probably the best pitching matchups we're going to see in the first round of the playoffs. You have Blake Snell versus Hunter Green, game 1. You have Yoshinobu Yamamoto versus, I'm assuming, either Andrew Abbott or Nick Lodolo in game 2. Most likely Andrew Abbott. And then game 3, if it gets there, it will be Ohtani versus the other one of Abbott or Lodolo. So, David, what do you think about the pitching matchups here? And then go ahead and give us your predictions.
I mean, you're right. This is the best pitching matchup, I think, in sum total. The Reds are here on the strength of their pitching. They've been really, really strong. Yeah, Abbott's been amazing. Hunter Green, when healthy, has been electric at a one-hitter the other week against the Cubs, who are in this playoffs and are a good 92-win team. Like it would not shock me to see the Reds pull this off. However, I went and took a look at their offense, and it's not good. It's not a good offense. The guys they've needed to perform and kind of not have those sophomore slumps, Matt McClain, Ellie, like they're just not getting it done. Like their best offensive player right now has been Miguel Andujar in this stretch. I don't trust it at all. But again, the thing that I'm going to keep harping on is that like weirder things have happened. This Red team might just go on a run, man. They might just have the belief and the faith. They might just be the team of destiny this year. It might be a freight train no one can stop. I don't know. I'm not going to go out of my way to predict that. I think the Dodgers take this in 2 games. It's light work for the Dodgers. These games might even be blowouts. But boy, would it not shock me if the Reds made it through anyway. I mean, I'm going to stick with Shohei Ohtani. I'm going to stick with Freddie Freeman. I'm going to stick with, Blake Snell, Yamamoto, like pitching staff. Like, yeah, the Dodgers bullpen has been kind of terrible this season, and it might cost them in this playoffs, but I'm okay with picking them against the Reds. I think that those guys, they win a lot of Yamamoto starts. I think those guys are going to be okay, and their offense is strong enough to get some runs across against these starters. Even though the Red starters are really good, I trust the Dodgers. So I'm not gonna stray from that. I think this is an easy one, but there's that chance, right? So,
yeah, I'll say about this series. There's a couple of different things that have happened over the past few years. It was last year where the Tigers kind of got that last spot, beat the Astros in a series. But this reminds me a whole lot more of the Marlins when they got in a couple years ago, went up against the Phillies. The Marlins got in on the back of pretty good pitching without much offense, scoring runs late, kind of backed their way in because it seemed like nobody wanted to make the playoffs. The Cubs kept dropping pop-ups in the outfield.
You had to do it.
David.
And
sorry for sending the stray your way.
Man.
But I mean the Marlins came into that series and just got annihilated by the Phillies, who were really, really good, but just fell behind the 103, 104 win Braves team in the division. So, I think that I'll be surprised if the Reds are really that competitive in this series. I think they'll probably keep the first 2 games close most for the first 4 or 5 innings because the pitching is good. But I seriously think the Dodgers offense is going to scratch off a couple of runs against those starters, and then they're just going to tee off on the bullpen, and the Reds just aren't going to be able to score on those guys. So, there is hope for the Reds because their pitching is good. And if their pitching can hold up and they can scratch a run or 2 across, then, maybe Ellie shows up finally. He hasn't really been that guy this year that we were expecting him to be. Maybe he shows up in this series. Maybe some of these young guys from the Reds that over the past couple of years have been really good at times. Spencer Steer, Noelvi Marte, Matt McLean, some of these guys, maybe they'll, show what they showed as rookies and what they showed last year, and they'll finally show up for the playoffs. But the Dodgers have the pedigree. The Dodgers are the better team. They've got a better offense. The pitching staffs are pretty close. I probably trust the Reds pitching staff a tiny bit more, but the offense is such a mismatch here that you got to go with the Dodgers in 2.
Yeah, so I think the pitching matchups are fantastic. I love both of these matchups. They're going to be intense playoff games that way. It's going to be very interesting to see which team trusts their bullpen more, because both of these bullpens have not been great, especially the Dodgers as of late. They have I think they have 26 blown saves or something this year, and I want to say like 10 of those have come in the last month or so. And it's not even like any one person that you could say like this guy's been terrible. It's kind of just been like everyone at a certain point is getting hit around. I was talking to one of my friends the other day, and I literally said, if I had a bullpen trust tree, I would say that Alex Vesia is at the front of it, and then it's like Will Klein, and then the next day Vesia blows a 3-run lead. Like that's exactly how it's just going right now as that. So I'm going to be interested to see what they're doing with starting pitching in LA. I think the Reds are also kind of on that thing too, where like we don't know who we can trust in our bullpen. It's going to be really fascinating to see how they use Chase Burns. If they kind of just say like, we're going to let you come in a 2-inning, 3-inning fireman role at some point if the game's close and try and keep it that way. But again, like you guys mentioned, the Reds offense this year, there's a stat going around by OPTA stats on Twitter out there. The Reds are the first team in MLB history to have no qualifying batter hit 270 and no qualifying batter hit 25 homers and still make the playoffs. That wasn't in a shortened season. Their offense is just not there at the moment. I think they have enough to maybe sneak one game out. So I'm going to say LA in 3, because I just think that I don't trust the Dodgers bullpen to completely handle it for 2 games or 3 games or whatever it is. So I'm going to say LA in 3. I do think the 2 games they win probably are wide margin wins, though. And the one that the Reds win is probably a close margin win because the bullpen blew it for the Dodgers. And the Reds probably, once they got the lead, just threw Nick Martinez because he's the Dodgers' new Zach Davies, who they just absolutely cannot hit at all. I don't know why. But anyways, let's move over to the last wild card series, and that's in the American League, where we have the rivalry, the Yankees and the Red Sox. Renewing it again this year. The Red Sox have won 9 of 4, like we were talking about. They also have a really good Game 1 pitching matchup. Garrett Crochet versus Max Fried in Game 1 is going to be very fun to watch as well. The rest of the series lined up Bayo versus Rodon in Game 2. Cam Schlittler in Game 3 is going to be the starter for the Yankees. We aren't sure what the Red Sox are going to do at that start. It would probably be some of like Peyton Toyle or Connor Early, or I don't know how to say it even. 2 young guys that have just came up and basically pitched very well for the Red Sox. So, Matt, if you're looking at this Yankees-Red Sox series, how are you feeling?
Yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting one too. Obviously, the Yankees and Red Sox are a team that are a rivalry that is always just a huge event. I'm really interested to see how the Yankees respond in this series because, I think the Yankees are the better team. They had the better record this year. They've got the pedigree. This is the first time the Red Sox have been there in a few years. But I mean, Aaron Judge has to show up. And when has Aaron Judge showed up in the playoffs ever? And you don't have a Juan Soto behind him to bail him out this year. You need Aaron Judge to show up for this series. The pitching matchup in Game 1, I think, is in favor of the Red Sox with Garrett Crochet. So you kind of look at that and say, well, the Yankees, Garrett Crochet wins Game 1. The Yankees down 1-0. Like the Yankees really, they really need to win Game 1, and they've got Max Fried going, so they've got a good shot with him pitching. But I definitely think that I think the key is going to be the Aaron Judge and the Yankees playing fundamental ball too. We saw that last year in the postseason in the World Series where the Yankees look like they're about to win game 5 or whichever the clinching game was, and then they just start dropping balls in the outfield. And it's just, the Yankees have a pattern of in the postseason, despite the fact that they've won some series in the postseason, they have a pattern of finding ways to lose games and not playing good baseball. So we'll see. We'll see if Aaron Judge can put away the horrors that have been the last few years in the playoffs. And we'll see if the Yankees can put together their pitching. David Bednar has been a big time acquisition for them. And I think that having, he's never been in the playoffs before, unless I'm forgetting something. So he's been with the Pirates his whole career, right? So,
yep.
Pirates are never in the playoffs. So, I definitely am. I don't know. It's another toss up. It's not like the Dodgers-Reds series where it's pretty clearly the Dodgers. I'm going to say, with this being at Yankee Stadium, the fact that the other New York teams in all sports can't seem to finish the deal, I think they're going to win. They owe the Red Sox one too. The Red Sox have beat them the last 2 or 3 times they faced off in the postseason. And I'm gonna go with the Yankees in 3, but I think it's gonna be a really good series, and I would not be surprised at all if the Red Sox win.
So this is the most interesting matchup, I would say, at least on paper, of teams in this group. I think you've got a team in New York with 94 wins in this spot, which is kind of the downfall of this kind of system where the Yankees would have run away with the division or with the wild card slot, and you would have been leaving the Tigers and the Red Sox out of the playoffs in the old format. But yeah, the Yankees were literally a game off of winning the AL East and having the number 1 seed in this format. And then whoever wins this series is going to go play Toronto, who did take home that spot. So only one member of the AL East is going to make it to the championship series. It's really quite funny. But I think New York's team is a lot better than Boston's team as a whole. I think you look at Cody Bellinger, Jazz Chisholm, Ben Rice, who has been excellent this season. I know that there's some issues with Volpe and his fielding, and you've got a few guys who are a little bit of butchers, but Giancarlo Stanton has been otherworldly this season, and that's a guy that does show up in the playoffs, right? You talk about Judge not showing up. Stanton shows up in the playoffs every time. He's going to be DHing, obviously. You've got the experience with a guy like Paul Goldschmidt in this lineup too. Like, I think the Yankees have 5 or 6 really tough outs. I think the Red Sox have 2 right now, maybe. Like, the Red Sox are all a bunch of scrappy guys, and that might work in the regular season to pick you up some wins. But I think there's a reason that this team didn't win 90 plus and get into that conversation for the division. I think there's just a significantly worse team, and Garrett Crochet can only take you so far. I think the Red Sox win game 1 and the Yankees blow them out in 2 and 3 is what I think happens. I just think the Red Sox don't have the pieces behind Crochet, the offense to keep up, a close margin that they do win in game 1. I'm going to go Red Sox or Yankees in 3, and games 2 and 3 are not close. I think ultimately this ends up being one of the series with the less drama because of that, because the Yankees offense just comes alive against the Red Sox. Brian Bayo, I think, gets lit up is my prediction, and the Red Sox have a really tough time digging out of that hole in game 2, and then have a really tough time in game 3, and that's it. So,
as Lee Corso would say, not so fast, my friend. When we were doing our early season predictions, that I picked Boston to be a team that was going to go very far in this playoffs. I think I picked them to be in the World Series. Don't ask who I picked them to be against and how I ended up that series ended up being predicted. But I just think there's something about this team that they step up for the big games when they need it, right? We've seen them do it against the Yankees this year. I like the pitching matchup for the Yankees, the starting pitcher in there. I don't know if I fully trust the Yankees bullpen to completely lock it down like they should be, right? We've seen playoff Devin Williams before. We've seen a lot of these guys not be able to handle it. We don't know what David Bednar is going to be in the playoffs, really. Not saying the Red Sox have much more. We've seen playoff Chapman also be a thing, but playoff Chapman or Aroldis Chapman's been insane this year, otherworldly, basically. Yeah. I think it's going to be Boston in 3, and I think it's Garrett Crochet leads them to game 1, basically. Game 2, Rodon pitches very well. And then game 3, they do pitchy madness there, and they find a way to get to Schlittler early and kind of try and take it out of the hands of the rest of the Yankees offense, right? I think New York's going to be rocking. I think that it's going to be a very back and forth series. I think that game 3 will be intense, but I think the Red Sox are just going to have enough to figure it out, basically. So I'm going to go Boston in 3.
Can I ask, I'm curious as to who you think is going to come through and score runs for the Red Sox, because no Devers,
no,
and no Roman Anthony in this series, which are the 2 guys I would have penciled in initially. I just don't know who's going to come through for him. I don't know if I have anybody I can trust, and I have like 6 guys in the Yankees that I'd be like, yeah, he could come through.
It's fair. Alex Bregman, first off, Alex Bregman is pretty good. I've been a big believer in Jarren Duran, and I think he will find a way to get his there. Trevor Story as well. If you're putting him against 2 left-handed hitters or 2 left-handed pitchers in games 1 and 2, for sure, I think he's a guy you count on. Me and you have talked a bunch about Wilyer Abreu as well. I'm a big Wilyer Abreu believer. I think this is going to be a series where you maybe see what he can do. And then Nathaniel Lowe has had a 114 WRC plus since getting to Boston. He has been pretty good for them as well. So there's names I trust. The star power is definitely on the Yankees. Don't get me wrong. But I just think there's something about the way the Boston team has been playing recently, and especially when they get to these games against a team like the Yankees, I think they just find a way to make it happen. And I wonder if the Yankees maybe have a little bit of flashbacks of last year's postseason run there. And maybe they just fall short a little bit there. So that's where I'm at there. So, anything else we want to hit on the playoffs as a whole real quick before we jump to player of the day and head off?
I think this is the most wide open playoffs I can remember. I don't think any singular team, every time I've talked about any team that I like, there's so many flaws, right? I think this is very likely a completely crazy playoffs. It's really exciting. It's great to have a team with a chance, right, in a playoffs like this, because anything can happen, man. I could see the Reds winning it all. They have the least number of wins. I could see it being, Blue Jays versus Phillies being those kind of top seeds. The Brewers could go through and take it. The Brewers could get swept out by the winner of Cubs Padres, right? This could get flipped on its head, or it could be chalk. I have no idea what's going to happen. And that, I think, makes for a very exciting playoffs.
Absolutely. I think it does. I mean, if you look at any of these series in the second round, if you look at any of those matchups, you could say it's very interesting either way. Yeah. And with whoever wins these wild card series, if you get a Phillies Dodgers matchup, that's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. No matter who's playing the Brewers, that's going to be fun to see if the Brewers magic can continue that way, right? You got the AL East matchup there in the bottom left here, and then can Cleveland or Detroit figure it out against Seattle and bring out a shocker there, right?
And I would even say that I'm looking at it, like you've got some droughts too, right? Cleveland's got their 50-year drought. Yep. Seattle has never won a World Series. That's one that they are very well positioned right now. And it would be really cool to get that one out. We talked at length before the season about the Phillies. That core is aging. They've still got a couple more years. But if the Phillies, this is one of the Phillies' best chances to put together a World Series run. They've got a lot of really good offensive talent there right now, and they've still got really good pitching even without Zach Wheeler. Like, You feel like the Phillies can make a run. So,
And this offseason is going to be very pivotal for them.
Yeah.
There's going to be change happening in Philadelphia this year, no matter what. So they know that in that locker room too. Are they going to try and use that as something to unify them as a push for one last kind of hurrah for this team as a total? Because there's going to be some changes.
I'll say one thing about this that's so interesting. I think 4 of the 5 best teams in the postseason are playing in the wild card. I think the Cubs, Padres, Dodgers, and Yankees are 4 of the 5 best teams with the Phillies. I think the 3 other division winners that got buys are good, very good teams, especially the Mariners. The Mariners are close to those other teams, but I think that those wild card teams are true talent, probably better than the teams that got buys. So that's going to be a very interesting dynamic to see. You know, some of these teams that I think are really good are going to get knocked out in a 3-game series here, and then you know the team that is going to have home field advantage and gets the bye, doesn't have to play that wild card series, is probably going to be the underdog in a bunch of these series. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with that.
Absolutely. Real quickly, let's run through some of this other stuff. Gavin has Phillies winning it all. Very well could. That was kind of just a point we were making right there.
That's my preseason pick, by the way. Phillies.
Nice points. I feel Judge and Stanton will win game 1 for the Yankees. Very well could. That's very well could.
Crochet against the righties. That is an interesting dynamic that we'll follow. But man, Matt made the point. Judge does not show up in the playoffs, and that is definitely a concern.
Could this be the year?
I want to make one final note here before we move on. 2 final notes. One is that Kyle Schwarber could become the highest most homers of any left-handed hitter in this postseason of all time. I believe he might already have it, but I think he could even get up to like the most homers in a postseason all time this year, which would be really cool. Number 2 is that I'm excited for some guys to make their names in the postseason. Who's going to be the next?
Who's going to be the guy to break out?
Right. Who's going to break out and become the next great like postseason performer? You know, maybe with Cal Raleigh. That'd be cool, right? MVP caliber performer going in,
breakout,
leading
one.
I mean, as a postseason performer too. You know.
Yeah. I got one interesting one to watch out for. Ceddanne Rafaela.
Good.
He apparently, I was watching the Red Sox game the other day. He shows up in big moments, so that's kind of a guy to watch out for. Guy that doesn't walk very much, but he could get you a big hit late in the game here.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And then before we move on to player of the day real quick, wait, who'd you pick in the series that matters? We'll just
Blake.
run. I know it is. We'll just run through them all real quick for Blake here. Detroit versus Cleveland. Matt took Detroit in 2. David took Cleveland in 3. I took Detroit in 2. Chicago versus the Padres. David took Cubs in 2. Matt and I both took San Diego in 3. LA versus Cincinnati. David and Matt took LA in 2. I took LA in 3. And then looking at Yankees versus Boston, Matt and David both picked New York in 3. I picked Boston in 3. So that's the rundown of all of the predictions that we have here. And then we will put a graphic out probably tomorrow morning before the series start to set our predictions out there on social media. So you can all go laugh at us when we're wrong. But now let's transition over to player of the day, as we have made it a whole season of player of the day votes.
That's been cool. Michael Harris got September 22nd. I think it was a limited action day. Shohei Ohtani picks up his 4th player of the day of the season on September 23rd. Cal Raleigh picks up his 4th on September 24th when he got to 60 home runs. Seiya Suzuki grabs September 25th. He had a couple of home runs. He was really, really dynamic this week in helping the Cubs lock up home field advantage. Mike Trout got 2 home runs on September 26th, and our Angels fans came through and voted Mike Trout for his 3rd Player of the Day award this season. Michael Busch grabbed it on September 27th for that near cycle that was taken away by those darn Cardinals. And then Alejandro Kirk picked it up yesterday for his 2 home run performance in locking up the Blue Jays, getting home field advantage and the bye through the playoffs as the 1 seed. So player of the week, among those names, fellas, I nominate Cal Raleigh as a final send off to his excellent season, but I would also see Mike Trout because Mike Trout. So what do we got?
I nominate Shohei Ohtani.
All right. Well, that guy is going to get plenty of awards without us giving him any extra ones.
All right.
Who you got?
I would be fine with Trout. I think that Alejandro Kirk as well, 2 homers in that big series to clinch that there. I think that's also a good story.
Yeah, I'll say I could be good with Trout. Trout finally played a factor in a postseason race. By
knocked out the Astros.
So the Astros, we didn't talk any about the Astros. They had a pretty big collapse this year too, and the Astros are missing the playoffs for the first time since 2016.
Probably be some big changes there too this year.
A long time, yes. So I'm sure we'll talk about that more once we get into postseason. But yeah, I think I'm going to have to go with Mike Trout. But if we want to go with Cal Raleigh too, I'm not going to object to that.
Since Cal Raleigh may yet get more awards from us, and Mike Trout likely will not, I'll go Mike Trout to pick up his second Player of the Week vote of the season, tying him with Eugenio Suarez and Cal Raleigh. I was kind of hoping we could give it to Cal Raleigh just so he'd get 3 on the year, but we'll go Mike Trout for 2 to tie him up.
Okay. Real quick, if we can look it up, who won the most Player of the Day votes?
It's either PCA, Ohtani, or Raleigh, and they might have all tied with 4. Tyler Soderstrom also had 4.
Yeah, I was about to say it wasn't Tyler Soderstrom, was it?
Yamamoto, Ohtani, Raleigh, PCA, and Soderstrom all had 4. I don't think anyone had 5.
Shows Scooble have 5?
Does Scooble have 5? Scooble might have 4 too. Yeah, I've got him at 4 and June 12th. He probably got another one.
June 29th.
Oh, yeah. So Scooble would have gotten the most on the season.
Yep.
I think 5 was it. Yeah, we managed to. A lot of people had 4, but only one had 5, and that was Streak Scooble.
And how many votes overall did we have?
We had 3,346 votes. So if you did vote on the polls, thank you for voting. That was really cool. It was cool to follow along the season from a single day at a time perspective where a lot of different guys got named by the account. Hopefully we get even more votes next season. I had a good time. I want to try to connect with other fan bases, get some teams enjoying it. The Angels fans love voting for their guys whenever they got in there. So shout out to them and shout out to anybody who voted. It was fun. I had a good time putting them up. We'll hit them up for the playoffs. Don't worry. They'll be up for the playoffs.
Try and do that too. Well, I think that's going to wrap up this episode. Wildcard series starts tomorrow. You'll see it Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Off day on Friday before the division series start on Saturday. So we will try to come back on Friday in some form and make at least a short video saying some predictions. Maybe if it's even a solo one for me or something needs to happen, we'll figure something out to get something for you guys and get those predictions out there. But it's playoff baseball, man. Like, there's nothing. There's so much things happening, but there's nothing better than October baseball. You just never know what's going to happen. So thank you guys for tuning into this episode. And like I said, we will catch you guys back hopefully on Friday for another episode.